Joining us now to discuss the reliably dismal inflation numbers released today is Rebecca Walser, CEO of Walser Wealth Management. You can find Rebecca on X at Rebecca Walser, it's Walser, or her website, walserwealth.com. And be sure not to miss her podcast, Crashes and Taxes. Welcome back to State of the Nation, Rebecca.
Thank you both for having me. Glad to be here.
You know, when one job isn't enough, we've got Americans taking multiple gigs now, and it doesn't even matter, does it? Because inflation again rose above expectation. And mind you, these are numbers that are cooked, aren't they?
Yeah, I wish I could disagree with that, Timothy, but we haven't seen, for example, on the employment numbers with 303,000 coming out for March last week, which we all knew was just completely inaccurate. We had the same day, like day before the jobs numbers came out, we had the 14-month announcement, the highest layoffs in 14 months. And then we're supposed to expect it to believe a 303 number the next day. In January, when the number was 353,000, I said, no chance. This is absolutely wrong. Seasonal adjustments. And sure enough, in February, they declined that by 124,000. So these numbers are very off. And the last time we've seen such revisions on all fronts was 2008 global financial crisis. So I think that this is a tell that they are manipulating data to keep Americans calm. But, unfortunately, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I am seeing the unraveling in front of our eyes in real time. When you start looking at the amount of countries that are taking actual delivery of metals out of Switzerland, that's the highest in 6 years. When we see the central banks of the world buying up, not just gold, not just silver, but palladium, platinum, copper, we understand it's almost, Timothy and Brian, it's like a crack up boom. We see the world taking dollars away, buying metals, and this is the end. This is the beginning of the end of the fiat system that is so atrociously untethered to real hard assets that we've gone crazy. And Americans are, and the world really, Americans not so much. We're lulled into thinking that the dollar will last forever. There is no fall of Babylon to come, and it is coming. But the world is saying you are spending $1 trillion of deficit every 100 days when you don't have a declared war, when you are not in the middle of a pandemic, when you supposedly are telling everyone you're not in the middle of a recession. Something is wrong. Something has shifted. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see it very, very soon, where Americans are going to have a wake up moment and they're going to see, oh, Lord, I was wrong. This dollar is a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Take me back to 2020. What were you thinking in 2020? Because when I saw what went on in 2020, and many other people too, many, of our colleagues, et al, were saying this is quite possibly the largest financial transfer, the largest transfer of wealth that we've ever seen. And even just today, there's new articles coming out, $400 billion squandered during COVID. I mean, numbers that could solve homelessness, numbers that could solve the border. And it's like, oh, we did that.
Yeah, Brian, what a great point. I mean, in 2020, we did something novel for the first time ever in the history of the earth. And it was very coordinated. It was globally coordinated. I was in my MBA program at that time. I traveled 5 to 6 countries and over those 2 years, 2020, 2021. And I tell you, it was the same everywhere. It was absolutely the same protocol everywhere. That doesn't happen without global coordination. So literally we printed 20 trillion, the equivalent of 20 trillion US dollars, 10 trillion in the United States alone. To your point of that 400 billion that was obfuscated through fraud of the PPE program and all the stimulus things that we had going to keep the world kind of going through coronavirus, because we voluntarily said, we don't really know how to stop the spread. So we're just going to shut down the economy of the world and we'll just print the money to deal with it. And as if we could just print that much money, absorb that much money and not create some sort of, not hyperinflation, but certainly massive fast inflation. And this is what the Fed is trying to fight against. And it is literally the Fed has now backed themselves into a catch-22 corner, because here's the problem. When you have interest rates the highest they've been in 23 years, which is where they currently are, you know that you have created asset bubbles and that we have to pivot. The Fed must pivot, because if the Fed doesn't pivot, the commercial real estate market is going to collapse. They cannot refinance. We have almost $1 trillion refinancing this year, and they can't refinance at these high rates. So if the Fed doesn't pivot, you're going to see the bubbles, the asset bubbles that we've created with this modern monetary theory, especially since 2008, start to collapse. Here's the problem that nobody is talking about except for economists. If you're in the world of economics, we're all talking about this. But if you're just a market person and you don't understand macro globals, then you don't talk about this. If and when the Fed does pivot, what you're talking about is the admission that we must continue to stimulate, that we do not have true asset values that can sustain the level of economic and asset activity that we've created these last, at least 15 years. And you are going to debase your currency. And in the midst of all of the BRICS nations that are moving away and de-dollarizing from the US dollar, this is the last instance that we want right now, Brian. We do not want to see debasement of our currency. So either way, we are set for a collision course with destiny of implosion of our currency. And I hate to be hyperbolic, but I am reading all of the economic data, and it is clear as day to me. It is black and white, explicitly clear. This is the path we are on.
And it looks like it's going to happen midsummer, just like we were warned last year that it was going to happen, because the Fed indicated today that after these dismal inflation numbers that they're not going to be able to lower rates in June as had been hoped. And who's going to sweep in? These people can't refinance their houses. Who's going to sweep in? It's going to be the BlackRocks of the world. And all of a sudden, there's going to be all this extra housing, Rebecca, for all the tens of millions of illegals that have flooded into the country. I wish we could keep talking about this for the next hour. It's such an important topic. Can't wait to have you on back soon again. Folks, go to Walser Wealth, that's WALSER wealth.com, and check out Rebecca on X at Rebecca Walser. Great information and news that you can use right here on today's News Talk, TNT.